This is a Snowtrooper. This figure released in 8 sets from 2019 through 2023. Overall, this is a decent figure, but sadly, he does not have a physical waist cape or a physical backpack. This figure is worth about $7 new and $5 used. This is Darth Vader. This figure released in 5 sets from 1999 through 2003. This was our very first Darth Vader with a pretty simple print on the torso and no leg printing. And if you're curious, this is his face. This figure is worth about $60 new and $18 used. This is Luke Skywalker. This figure released in 2022 exclusive to the Dark Trooper attack. Overall, this is a pretty good figure with a pretty good torso print, leg printing, and even a decent back print, even though it's covered up by the cape. And if you're curious, this is the second face. This figure is worth about $6 new and $5 used. This is the Guavian Security Guard. This figure released in 2 sets from 2017 through 2018, that being the Wrath Tark's cape and the 2018 Advent Calendar. Overall, this is a decent figure with some fine printing on the torso and even a unique molded head. This figure is worth about $7 new and $5 used. This is Han Solo. This figure released in 4 sets from 2016 through 2021. Overall, this is a great figure, but sadly, the tan and light nougat printing on the torso is very faded. And if you're curious, this is the second face. This figure is worth about $8 new and $5 used. This is R3M2. This figure released in 2017 exclusive to the R3M2 polybag. Overall, this is a decent astromech droid with some pretty simple printing on the torso and a clear domed head, which isn't too common. But sadly, this figure was made before back printing on astromech droids was common. This figure is worth about $10 new and $7 used. This is the 501st Officer. This figure released in 2023 exclusive to the 501st Specialist Battle Pack. Overall, this is a fine figure with decent printing on the torso, but sadly, no physical camo. With these newer helmets, the rangefinder falls off way too easily. This figure is worth about $4 new and $4 used. This is Princess Leia. This figure released in 3 sets from 2019 through 2023. Overall, this is a great figure with excellent printing on her torso and skirt. And if you're curious, this is her second face. This figure is worth about $11 new and $8 used. This is the Dark Trooper. This figure released in 2 sets from 2021 through 2023, that being Moff Gideon's Light Cruiser and the Dark Trooper attack. This figure has excellent torso printing, leg printing, even an armor piece to give him extra bulk. If you're curious, those gray spots are meant to indicate where there is empty space on the figure. And this is his face print. This figure is worth about $7 new and $5 used. This is Grogu. This figure released in 9 sets from 2020 through 2024. But the torso piece used isn't entirely accurate. But it does have some nice printing, and even the head is made out of the more rubbery material so that the ears don't snap. This figure is worth about $5 new and $4 used. This is the First Order Executioner. This figure released in 2018 exclusive to the First Order Specialist Battle Pack. Overall, this is a decent figure with a nice black band printed on the helmet. But the torso print is practically the same as the First Order Stormtrooper, besides a bit of black printing on the top and the black arms. And if you're curious, he just has a regular angry clone head. This figure is worth about $10 new and $5 used. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi. This figure released in 2 sets from 2022 through 2023, that being Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter and the Obi-Wan paper bag. This figure has excellent robe printing on the torso and legs. And if you're curious, this is his second face. This figure is worth about $7 new and $5 used. This is Boba Fett. This figure released in 2 sets from 2023 through 2024, that being the Boba Fett mech and the Sarlacc pit. Overall, this is a great Boba Fett figure with great torso printing, leg printing, and even arm printing. And the figure does even have a back print, even though it's covered up by the jetpack. But the figure sadly does not include his cloth pauldron. And if you're curious, this is his face. This figure is worth about $10 new and $6 used. This is Darth Vader. This figure released in 4 sets from 2023 through 2024. Overall, this is a great figure with amazing printing on the torso, legs, and even arm printing. And the figure does even have some back printing, even though it's covered up by the cape. And if you're curious, this is his face. This figure is worth about $9 new and $8 used. This is the Weequay Guard. This figure released in 2017 exclusive to the Dazzle Skiff cape. Overall, this is a pretty good figure with some pretty good printing on the torso and legs. This figure is worth about $18 new and $9 used. This is the 501st Trooper. This figure released in 2 sets from 2020 through 2022, that being the 501st Battle Pack and the 501st Foil Pack. Overall, this is an excellent figure and is arguably one of the most popular LEGO minifigures ever made. But the figure has excellent printing on the torso, legs, and helmet. This figure is worth about $9 new and $7 used. This is the Rebels TIE Pellet. This figure released in 3 sets from 2015 through 2017. Overall, this is a decent figure with the Rebel style printing on his helmet and a pretty simple torso print. But sadly, he does not have any leg printing. And if you're curious, he just has a regular angry clone head. Overall, I would give this figure about a 6 out of 10. This figure is worth about $6 new and $3 used. This is Dak Relter. This figure released in 2004 exclusive to the Rebel Snowspeeder. Overall, this is a very simple figure with the basic print on the torso and helmet. And he just has the regular smiling face. Overall, I would give this figure about a 5 out of 10. This figure is worth about $14 new and $5 used. This is Ahsoka. This figure released in 2 sets from 2020 through 2021. Overall, this is a pretty good figure with pretty good printing on her torso and leg. But her Leku is a bit oversized. And if you're curious, this is her second face. This overall, I would give this figure about a 7 out of 10. This figure is worth about $13 new and $9 used. This is the Pilot Battle Droid. This figure released in 6 sets from 2011 through 2015. Overall, this is a decent figure with pretty simple printing on his torso. And he just has the same exact parts for his arms, heads, and legs as the regular battle droids. And there is a much better version that released in the 2024 Droid Carrier. This figure is worth about $4 new and $2 used. This is Endor Leia. This figure released in 2023 exclusive to that year's advent calendar. Overall, this is a fine figure with pretty decent printing on the torso, but sadly very inaccurate leg printing. And the same figure with a helmet appeared in the Endor Speeder Chase diorama. But this figure definitely should have came with her camo poncho. This figure is worth about $6 new and $4 used. This is the Hoth Scout Trooper. This figure released in 2022 exclusive to the Snow Trooper Battle Pack. Overall, this is a pretty good figure with great printing on the torso and legs. And the figure uses the great dual molded helmet. And if you're curious, this is her face. This figure is worth about $5 new and $4 used. This is D-O. This figure released in 4 sets from 2019 to 2020. Overall, this is a pretty good figure with pretty good printing on the side and the top of the cone. But this figure is all one piece and too small, so the wheel can't actually move. This figure is worth about $4 new and $3 used. This is Greef Karga. This figure released in 2021 exclusive to the Imperial Armored Marauder. Overall, this is a great figure with excellent printing on his torso and legs. Overall, I don't really have any real complaints about this figure, except I do wish that he had a second face. Overall, I would give this figure about an 8 out of 10. This figure is worth about $6 new and $4 used. This is the Sith Trooper from Rise of Skywalker, not to be confused with the Sith Troopers from the Old Republic era. This figure released in 4 sets from 2019 to 2022. Overall, this is a decent figure with some pretty good printing on his torso and legs, and he uses the same helmet as the First Order Stormtrooper. And if you're curious, he just has a regular Angry Clone head, and this one is a bit beat up. This figure is worth about $7 new and $4 used.